Welcome back, guys. I chased down somebody pretty special in the Microsoft lounges. Alex from Android Central, how are you?
I'm great. It's been a crazy busy week for us here. It
has been.
For Android phones and Chromebooks and tablets and everything running Android, and we're just kind of getting into like the lull now of exploring the halls and after all the big announcements. So it's a nice course it's taken.
And just so you guys know where we're at, Alex and I were at the bar a little bit late last night.
A little bit, yeah. You later than me.
Yeah.
I had to pack it in at like 1:30.
Yeah, well,
an old man now.
Jaime showed up at like, what, 12:30? I was like, God, Jaime, what are you doing? So Jaime's going to be on at 5.
He is. He's going to be much more hungover than me.
But he was only out for one drink.
Oh, okay. So it's not too bad.
Yeah. All right, so IFA.
Android.
Highlight.
Okay, highlight for me.
Let's start there.
Okay, so I'm probably holding the highlight for me in my hand, the Sony Xperia XZ. This was probably the biggest Android flagship that we had this year at IFA. We also had a lot of interesting stuff from Huawei, but this pretty little thing is probably the biggest deal in high-end Android phones right now from the show, and it looks nice. It's a successor to what we saw from Sony early in the year with the X range. This is the XZ or XZ, depending on what you prefer.
Sorry, guys.
So they're taking a lot of what they learned last time with the Xperia X and turning it into more of like a...
So let's just talk about the back of this. So
the back of this is very shiny.
This is metal. It's covered in fingerprints, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's my fault. Sorry. So
it's
covered in my fingerprints.
But I mean, phones generally a little bit of a fingerprint magnet. This one looks a little bit like that, but you can I can kind of catch it where you see that kind of shimmer.
Yeah, and it's something a lot of metal phones don't really have.
Yeah.
We used to having brushed aluminium on phones, and this is like a textured stainless steel that is kind of unique to see. And of course, you have the normal plastic around the sides, but it gives
How do you
it a
feel
nice
about that?
contrast. I don't know. I'm in two minds. I think if you're going to do a metal back in that way, you kind of have to have plastic somewhere because that's how phones work, right?
Yeah, you need the antennas to be able to.
The antennas have got to go somewhere.
Yeah.
But it has kind of a nice soft feeling in the hand. I mean, I know you've used a lot of Sony phones.
Yeah.
Sometimes some of the older ones with metal around the edges will be very sharp in your hand, and you'd be holding it, and it'd be like kind of awkward. Like, how do I hold this?
The thing that I don't know how much closer you guys can go onto this phone, but what I really liked about the design of this is a 2.5D glass display. So if you look at that, it curves around the side, and then we go into the bumper.
And it's incredibly subtle, isn't it?
It's not incredibly subtle.
Like S7 Edge style. It's
the design
very,
on
very
it,
slight
and
on the edge.
what I love about this is I am not a fan at all of 2.5D glass. I think that I when it's exposed, I chip the sides.
It gets
it's not as
up,
durable.
yeah.
It gets scratched up. It's just not as beautiful. But the way that they've done it, it's really subtle and it's protected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
right?
it means, especially if it's in your pocket all day, the coating, the smudge-resistant coating on the edge doesn't get worn off. There are a bunch of benefits from that, but at the same time, it does look a little bit chunkier and blockier than like a Samsung phone or an iPhone.
I mean,
or
so
that
we have this like very rectangular shape with the bottom, but I do like the way that I think that this is metal down here.
I believe it is.
Yeah, it kind of
it's
sounds
metal.
like
it's
it.
metal-like, yeah. it's very flat, whatever it is. And what I like about that is the fact that you can stand it up on a flat surface.
Oh yeah, that's true.
That's.
We were all taking our photos at the Sony booth, and we were all standing up the phones. What I do like is at the top here, they have the NFC reader.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, so
I thought it's a very different location for it.
It's different. I'm not sure how I feel about that really, because you have obviously you're kind of flipping it over and slamming in a payment terminal, and you maybe
right
damage
onto
the screen
display.
on the display.
Boom.
But again, if you have the metal around the back,
you can't
put NFC in there. So yeah, it's kind of like a trade-off there, I guess.
All right, so now you have taken the time to okay.
Unlock. I'm gonna have
maybe let's go wide. There you go.
Quick
unlock it.
Button. Okay, there we go.
Okay, you can hang on to it. Now let's talk about the camera, because
so the camera is
to be honest
deal.
with you,
absolutely huge
deal.
deal.
So let's go over the specs on it, because there's a lot of stuff going on, and I haven't really played as much with it as you have.
I've had this for about a week now. It's basically a continuation of what they started with the X Performance.
Right.
It's Snapdragon 820, 3 gigs of RAM, 32 gigs of storage. Your standard Android flagship stuff. So you have that, but the huge deal is around the back. You have the first hardware stabilized camera from Sony in a phone, which is a huge deal because for a long time they'd just gone with the super high megapixel counts. They hadn't put optical stabilization in. A lot of other technologies they hadn't necessarily adopted, like laser autofocus. You got a color spectrum sensor around the back as well, and of course your LED flash. But the huge deal is you have that big 23 megapixel sensor now, but it's also stabilized. So you get the benefit of really, really detailed photos outside, but it's also pretty good in low light.
Is it really? Is it?
It's reasonably. I mean, it's not GS7 good in low light. It's pretty good, but it's at that point where there's
How
a nice balance.
Like, let's compare it to, say, the Galaxies. Because
Okay,
the
it's
Galaxies are excellent.
They're excellent.
in low,
Yeah,
they're excellent in
Samsung
low
I
light.
think probably is
Is
making the best cameras in any phone right now.
So
I would say it's not a straight comparison, but I would say like GS6, high GS6 kind of level. So it's pretty good.
So better than a G5 then. I'm pushing
you put me on the spot there.
I'm pushing you into a corner.
I think
It's true. I am.
For me, the G5 is probably the more versatile one.
It is.
Because it's you have that. I think you probably have superior stabilization. You have a smaller pixel count, so you're not handling so many tiny pixels, and you get benefits there with low light. And just they process photos a little bit differently on the LG side. But yeah, for a company like Sony that needs all the differentiators that it can get, the fact that it has this really good stabilized camera now, they're not sort of trying to play catch up with everyone else. They're more or less at the same level as everyone else, and that's huge for them, I think.
So I have been a massive Sony fangirl for years and years and years. Right, like even from like the original James Bond, the experience, like the original James Bond phone, which is like
they've tried to make a few Bond phones.
Yeah, they've tried, and I bought them all. I was all in on all of them. But the last generation, I'll be honest with you, I actually didn't bother doing a detailed review on it.
Yeah,
which was really unfortunate because I liked the departure between the Z5 and then their last line because it was so much more fashion focused, and there was an element of design present that wasn't there on a lot of other handsets, and they were going for like a very non-technical crowd. Like very fashionable, and that's kind of why I was just like, you know what, I'm kind of busy right now, and the attention on Sony's been waning a little bit.
A little bit, and I think part of that is because
break my heart, but but like you also seem to be a bit of a Sony fan. How do you think they're gonna?
Yeah, and it's been the same for me. In the past year, it's gone a little bit weird for them. The Z3 I thought was a really, really good phone for the time. One of my favorites on the Sony side.
The Z2 even, what I thought was killer.
And they were like slowly getting better and better, and things wobbled a little bit. And now this year they've tried to reinvent themselves with the X series. And now they're taking that to sort of the next level, introducing more of like a traditional flagship side of things to this in this phone. But yeah, I think there is room there for them to reestablish themselves as that sort of high-end player, and that there's a lot of unique Sony technology that goes into this, and a lot of the things that gave them an advantage back in the days of the Z2 and the Z3 is still there. And if they can sort of pick themselves up from this wobble they had in the past 12 months, then maybe there'll be some potential there in the long run.
So I think that they've learned some lessons. So
definitely.
the X Compact is available next week.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I had the product manager in here on camera telling me about it because I was just like, dude, you're gonna launch
Give us the date. Just tell us.
You're gonna launch in like 2 months and no one's gonna care. And he's like, no, we learned X Compact next week, and then this one in the next 3.
Sure, awesome.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's something else we have to talk about. There's a compact version of this.
Momentum is like maybe they can keep it.
You would hope so, yeah. And the other important thing is Sony, as well as just making nice phones in general, is one of the few manufacturers to actually take all that technology and shrink it down to something that is basically iPhone-sized. So 4.6-inch screen. And we have what is kind of a sidestep from this, but still it has all the new camera technology in the X Compacts, which...
That's very true. Do you think that we could try to look for one of the Sony X Compact video? To play an overlay, thank you. Yeah, so the thing about the X Compact, I like small form factor phones. I'm just going to tell you a thing that happened in London to me when I was there for the Note 7. I didn't realize that men in particular are after small form factor handsets.
Really?
And I put this together after all of my guy friends in London were like, Nicole, what phone do I buy? And I'm like, well, if you want something 5 inches, you have to go for like, say, a Xiaomi Mi 5. If you want something that's like small, compact, durable, right, like fast, like
sure.
you know what I mean. Like the Mi 5 would probably be my go-to small form factor handset. He had a compact from last year.
Yeah, a lot
Right.
of people have.
A lot of
you
people
still
have
see a lot of
them.
Z3 compacts.
A
And
lot of people still have them, and there was nothing really to come up and replace it, right? Unless you wanted that super feminine phone. But I found out the reason why is that when they put the phone in the front of their pants, they can't have the big phones.
yeah, because you
just-
have to kind of like lean back.
You have to lean back, and you have to
it's
just
super awkward. Yeah.
It's super awkward. But this X Compact line, I'm not really sure that this is appealing to men. Like in terms of its design and the way that it's like plastic and bubbly, it doesn't seem very svelte.
It is.
To me-
It's kind of taking after the Z5 compact, which was this much chunkier thing, so it's much thicker than the XZ. But yeah, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I don't think it's necessarily a case of just things getting blockier at the lower end. I will agree with you on the glossy back though. Like super glossy plastic, I think has had its day in phones. We
Yeah.
need to move on from that.
And the white and the kind of like light blue aqua.
I kind of like the blue. The blue kind of reminded me of the blue Nexus 5. It's that kind of grayish blue. I don't know.
Reminded me a bit of gangrene.
Gangrene.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I was like, is it moldy?
You get your X compact in gangrene blue.
Gangrene blue.
That's not the
A
actual name.
little bit of bruised. I was a little hesitant around it. I mean, I am a fan now of like the small form factor handsets. I have been for a long time, but in that time I had to adopt purses
Sure.
because I had to start using larger form factor handsets because that was the trend. And now I'm a purse person, right?
Sure.
So women tend to like bigger phones now because they always have a handbag, and men are just like,
Yeah.
I kind of want something smaller.
And there
And
are-
Sony and Sony's one of the few who's actually catering to that.
Exactly, yeah. And I think the argument on the other side is you have phones like the GS7, which are basically the same size, and you just cut out more area around the screen until you're basically just holding a screen.
Yeah.
So the appeal of having just a smaller screen in itself, if there's a bunch of bulk around it, isn't necessarily there anymore.
Yeah, that's very true. But we're also seeing the trend this show for like in general small handsets. I think this would be the show where I've seen the most small, which is like 5-inch.
Yeah,
5.2
5 is now small, right?
5.2 inches now,
Yeah,
mini.
and we saw some from Huawei this week, didn't we? The
Huawei,
Nova.
the
The Nova, which is
Nova.
basically, I love the design of that phone.
So do
it's
I.
basically a tiny, diddy little Nexus 6P.
Yeah.
The design is almost identical, and
The Axon 7 Mini.
true.
Also,
yeah.
there was that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. ZT's doing a lot of good stuff there.
ZT,
And
yeah.
it's crazy to think we're almost seeing this step back from where we used to be a couple of years ago, where everyone's pushing 5.7 to 6 and above 6, and now we're stepping back a little bit, and people are realizing that actually there are some benefits to having a smaller phone, and because things are more efficient now, you can have the high-end specs in there, and also a relatively average-sized battery, and still get pretty good battery life out of it.
And men can fit them in their
We can
pants.
fit, yeah, we would have to do this and reach
Put them
around,
in
yeah.
your pants. I kind of laughed when I realized that after like 5 or 6 of my guy friends, and I'm like, no, really, what is it? And
The
they're
worst
like,
thing is, in an airplane seat, you have 2 phones in your pockets, and it's like elbowing the person next to you. It's the worst thing in the world when you're carrying a large phone.
Okay, so let's go back to that point that you made just now about the Nova.
The Nova, yeah, that's the
Yeah.
new mid-range line
The
from
new
Huawei.
mid-range line.
Yeah.
And obviously you've played with the Honor 8.
The Honor 8, yeah, I have one in my pocket.
You have one in your
so-
pocket, yeah. So let's talk Honor 8 versus, like, let's say the Nova.
It's a totally different strategy, I think, because the Honor 8 is more about... I mean, it kind of is about the design, but it's obvious that the materials that are in the Nova are kind of more high-end. There's the tolerances are a little bit tighter. It's just a little bit more premium in the hand. Whereas with the Honor, you go with a glass and metal on the back, and it feels a little bit more, lightweight and less sort of, premium in a certain way. But you get the higher end specs on the inside. So it's almost like they're at a very similar price point, but there are 2 different kind of approaches to what you put in them.
2 very different approaches. I like the Honor 8. I do.
I do, yeah. I've been using it this week.
I
Dual
do.
SIM, super useful for when you're
Super
traveling.
useful, half decent battery life. Actually,
Really good
really
battery
good,
life.
Yeah,
Yeah,
really,
this
really
week.
good battery life. But to me, it's too flimsy.
It is. Well, I wouldn't say flimsy, but the back of mine is.
I'm gonna
gets,
break it.
It's-
I broke mine by the end of the hands-on.
How did you break it?
The back cracked.
Oh wow.
Maybe it
What
came
did you do
cracked.
to it?
Maybe it came cracked and I didn't notice. But by the end of the hands-on, I
Wow,
had a
that's
very
surprising.
I had a very small
I-
hairline fracture at the end of the back of my phone.
I've noticed that the back, you have to be very careful with the back. In a lot
Very
of countries, they
careful.
give you a case to put on the back because it does
Yeah.
get scratched quite easily.
Yeah.
That's
In the
just-
U.S., we got a case at
Yeah.
the San Francisco launch.
Sure.
But to me, Okay, so I said between the Honor 8 and the P9, I would still pay the extra money for the P9
Really?
because I won't break the phone.
That's true, yeah, and it
Right?
doesn't sort of
Like the
hovercraft around.
P9 is the solid phone. The Honor 8 slides off of everything.
It does, yeah.
Literally slide like and I'm like a ninja trying to like save the phone from just the environment around me where it's like
It
and
was-
I'm like
I found this, same thing. I was in New York last week with our other executive editor, Andrew Martinick. He had one, and we were at restaurants, and it was constantly, I was like, had to dive in and
Grab
stop
it.
it falling off tables. So yeah, it's a tricky proposition now because you have the P9, which is basically the same phone to a large extent.
to a large there are some pretty significant differences
Yeah.
in the camera. I would say the
Sure.
Leica branding definitely did something.
And they have the tuning. Yeah, they have the tuning behind that. It isn't just a name on the back.
Yeah.
The photos do look a little bit different between the two. But the interesting thing for me on the Nova side is that they're positioning that towards more of like a traditional mid-range phone, where it's just those internals, and you have a traditional like 16 megapixel OIS camera, but also in this really impressive body. So it's like if you pay that much money, you can either get the specs and the slightly less spectacular build, or you can go with all build and maybe just good enough internals on the inside. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how those two compete in the spaces where they're sold together in Europe.
So I didn't like the thing that I put together about the Honor 8 launch. They've definitely switched their strategy.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Honor 8 is the new Honor. Right?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that it's not the Honor that we saw before. Because the Honor that we had before was good specs, shitty design. Right? Basically that's kind of
the 7
that
wasn't
was-
7
that
wasn't too
was-
bad.
The 7 wasn't too bad.
The
You're right.
5 was
You're
kind
right.
of plasticky. 5X was kind of plasticky. So yeah,
there was
I kind of
like-
agree with that.
Right.
I think.
But now I think that, and also in my meetings with Huawei, when I kind of would bring up the Honor, so I had a one-on-one here this week, and they've always said Honor's our online brand. Honor's our online brand. But I really kind of understood this time that they're going to make them compete, right? Because they legitimately view them as two different sales channels.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
that don't even overlap.
And that's especially true in the US, where the Huawei phones that are sold tend to be to carriers, they're mid-range, and now with the new Honor, you have this super high-end thing that's more like a OnePlus competitor, right?
So that's actually really funny. I'm using a OnePlus right now.
Cool.
Right, I'm so on the camera. The battery life's a bit average, but I can't move over to the Honor because I'm going to break it. Right?
What do you feel about the software on those two? Because obviously it's a totally different.
Completely different.
Yeah, and Huawei has come a long way,
They've
long
come
way in
a
the
long
past
way.
year, but they have.
So from all of the operating systems that don't have an app drawer, honestly, Huawei's EMUI.
I've heard people call it EMU UI before,
EMUI.
which is EMUI.
Or Emotion UI is the best. I mean, honestly, Oppo drives me crazy.
ColorOS, yeah, I can't stand.
ColorOS makes me mad, and it's the fact that it has strong search. You pull down from anywhere on the home screen, and then you can type in, and it's direct OS search. Direct operating system search. So it's like you go and you type it in, and it just searches your phone immediately. Whereas most of the ones that don't offer, like, they make you go to Google just to search for apps in your phone.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's actually crazy. So I think that they're doing quite well. And for people who are going to move over from move over from iOS,
A lot of
it's-
commonality there.
there's a lot of commonality there.
It's not like a straight up clone, but you'll be very comfortable.
You'll be
if you're
very
coming
comfortable
over
making the
from
move
that,
over.
yeah.
Whereas OnePlus with Oxygen is like fanboy of Android heaven.
It is, but that's part of the brand, isn't it? Right? That's
Yeah.
the appeal of it. They're going after people like you and me with that, who
Yeah.
want that stock Android with a little bit of extra topping on top of it.
To be honest with you, I'm not sure how public this is, but we're going to put it on the live stream anyways. But Helen, the girl behind Oxygen, is taking a step back.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm going to be very interested to see what's going to go on
Yeah.
with Oxygen in like future iterations. When
Sure,
it
because
was
we're looking at like Nougat coming out for that now, and
Yeah.
surely that's being worked on, and how is that going to affect things? Because there are some pretty big visual changes there too.
very big visual changes. Yeah,
So,
so lots of exciting things.
Yeah.
Like actually, and Android's picking up again in terms of excitement, I think.
It is. It used to be like Android at trade shows was weird, where you'd have maybe one or two flagships, and then there would just be a lot of boring stuff that people didn't care about. Now Android is everywhere. Android is universal more than it's it's ever been. We've had new Android Wear watches, a single new Android Wear watch this week, which is kind of showing us the way that Asus are going, and moving towards a round design that's more friendly to Android Wear 2.0.
What did you think of the ZenWatch 3?
I think it's nice. I'm not like super keen on the lugs. The lugs look a little bit weird to me. But I definitely think that's the way you're moving with Android Wear watches now, where it's circular. It looks like a watch. You have buttons. It's a little bit big and chunky. There's certainly room for smaller, more svelte watches, and we'll see if anyone caters to that market.
I think women are late adopters for wearables. I mean, honestly, like we're a little too fashion forward, and a lot of the stuff is too.
And the market itself is to blame there as well, isn't it?
Yeah, like I'm just like, I don't want Swarovski crystals with like weird, like, you know what I mean? Like that's not really my style.
Sure.
Right. So I think it's. And then plus, honestly, I don't know how to dress myself wearing these things, because like I get that I have to take the watch off a lot in order to charge it. But if I'm wearing it in the morning and then I put on a sweater and then all of a sudden my sweater is like caught on the watch,
tangled up in it,
right?
yeah.
And
Especially
because they're so big, and I'm like, And I can like putting on jackets and things. I've just found that I have trouble functioning in the real world because all these watches just are really too big for me.
And actually, something that's quite interesting that Samsung is doing, they have two big, bulky new watches this time.
Oh,
they
didn't.
S3.
They don't care about women in these, not even a little.
Well,
not
no,
even a little.
The presentation was very much like a
Men.
all-men presentation, yeah. But if you look at what they're doing with the Gear S2, they're keeping that around. That is their smaller watch. They don't have a replacement.
I legitimately told them, I'm like, have you heard of Swatch? Like,
yeah.
I mean, like they just need to go colorful and like very design forward. I mean, they had, I can't remember the name of the designer for the S3 line, but they had some very nice wallpapers that were also paired with the Note 7. You could have like a really like very design focused, like whole ecosystem of things around the wallpapers on the smartwatch, but they need to make the watch itself a little less, I'm going for a run. Like,
yeah, and I don't know. I think they'll eventually get to that. They were sort of there last year with the S2, and they've decided, I guess, this time they're not refreshing the smaller watches. They're just going all big, and it's going to be big because they're going with LTE. They're going with a bunch of fitness features, and that just makes sense with the product, for better or worse. And if you want something smaller, I guess you've got the Gear S2, and eventually that'll fade out in favor of something else. And hopefully it's not just going to be massive, big battery, big screen LTE smartwatches, because that's just such a limited market, right? It's a niche of a niche.
Yeah, you're right. It's a complete niche of a niche. And I'm trying to remember the name of that smartwatch company back in the day that had that $1 million Kickstarter. I know his first name, Laurent from Shenzhen. Anyways, there was and it was, 1 hour and 15 minutes of battery life.
Wow.
And it was literally for you to go out on your bike and like take like a bike and do your GPS and people wanted it. Like one of the very first Kickstarters that was over $1 million. Wow. And I think that like when we look at the smartwatch ecosystem, there's been a lot of random peaks that aren't necessarily in line at all with usability.
And I think unlike smartphones, it's taken, we're into the second year of like mainstream smartwatches now. Everyone is still trying to work out what these things are supposed to do, and you have so many different categories of them. And it's almost like this very, very gray area between very, very basic Fitbit style things at the low end, and then, your full equipped LTE, all singing, all dancing, answer phone calls on it type thing at the high end. And maybe we just need something that's really good in the middle, and we'll see from Apple what we get next week in that respect. But yeah, it's still a very ongoing kind of thing in that space.
So what are you expecting to see from Apple next week?
I'm expecting, a smartwatch, obviously. I think everyone who's using an Apple Watch is going to be very happy to see hopefully more than 18 hours of battery life out of the thing. You would hope. On the phone side, I guess that the rumors are all pointing to your classic two phone kind of style things. It'll be a new iPhone. It'll have better battery life. Maybe it'll be thinner. The big thing is that people are freaking out about is the lack of a headphone jack. I think that's probably more fuss than we need to have over that. If Apple wants to do it, they'll do it, and they own Beats, so they can just kind of force that through.
Yeah, I find it annoying though when a phone doesn't like the LaTV handsets. What was it? The Max came without a headphone jack, and
And the new Moto
It's
phones
another.
as well.
It's just another thing that I need to remember to charge.
Yeah, and our managing editor Daniel Bader was saying, he goes out, get a train ride or something, forgets his adapter. Now he can't listen to music.
Yeah.
And so many people are going to be in that boat, regardless of whether or not Apple actually ships you the adapter in the box. And knowing Apple, that is by no means guaranteed.
Yeah, I'm really hoping to see a refresh on their laptops. There's still there's still Haswell in some of them, which is a 2-year-old CPU.
I know, yeah, it's
like
crazy.
they are it's actually shocking.
So many people at Mobile Nations are waiting on new MacBook Pros.
It is
it's
actually.
insane.
I can't believe it, to be honest with you.
And there's
Can't
been a
even
lot of
believe
great
it.
rumors, like they're going to get rid of the function buttons and replace it with a smart LED strip, which could be amazing.
Ooh.
I would love to see that, but
I haven't been a MacBook user in, I would say, 6 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been a while. I've been back on Windows, but
you think these will tempt you? If they're
you
good
know
enough?
what? To be honest with you, no one on Windows is doing an LED kind of interaction on a laptop. If that does come through, I maybe would borrow somebody's and then see if I want to buy it. Or maybe I would spend a lot of time in the Apple Store really testing it out for the first time in a long time, to be honest. Yeah.
I think for me, what I'd like to see is just obviously the Air has been around for a while. The current Pros are super old. But what I would like to see is like the engineering that's gone into the new MacBook with Core M's. And there's batteries that are kind of distributed around it, and super thin, super light. If they can take that engineering prowess and bring it to something that's bigger, that's deliberately bigger, that is going to be really interesting. But I mean, the rumor mill is all over the place right now as to whether we'll get these next week. They could well be an October event. We could still be waiting. We'll have to wait and see.
That's true. Sometimes they separate the launches. You really never know with Apple.
We'll just have to see.
We'll have to wait and see.
But while we're on Apple, something really interesting that we've been seeing in all these leaked dummy units for a while, those pins on the back of those things that could maybe be for some kind of plug-in module, like Moto Mods. And you can imagine if anyone could do a battery case in that style that would be really good, that people would actually buy, surely it's Apple.
So just outside the Microsoft booth, there is a company that is showing a wooden iPhone 7 case.
Wow. Actually, yeah, we see this a lot at IFA. A lot of the dummy units end up here.
A lot of the dummy units end up here. I remember getting a hands-on with a case with the iPad 3 or 4 here, and I was like, God, look at this, guys! And it was a rugged case, right? So really, you couldn't see.
Look at this giant.
Look at this
rectangle.
giant, yeah, and it's got lots of bouncy stuff around it. You can it's rugged, yeah.
I remember looking at the world's jankiest iPhone. I think it was 5 dummy unit at the time that one of the case manufacturers had, and they were like, they weren't supposed to show it to anyone. And it was, you turn it around and there's like a cardboard thing that looks like iOS 3 on it, and it's like it's sort of magical because you're holding an iPhone, and it surely was based off something that was real, but it's just another part of the hype that goes into it. And of course, this show being right before Apple always does its stuff, it's a great opportunity to see these things before they're
well, and that's the thing about IFA is a very accessory focused show because we also have all of the washing machines and all of the appliances, and now connected home is a thing. So finally, this weird world of gadgets is melding with this home, right? And we're like, oh God, IoT and connected kitchen. But suddenly IFA is becoming a little more unified.
A little bit,
right?
yeah.
So all everything that seemed really random that I was walking through, and then there was epilators, right? And then you're just like, wait, what's happening? But now these case manufacturers who are just like, I'm showing an iPhone 7, don't seem so out of place.
Exactly,
right?
Yeah. It's all part of that great mix of IFA. And one of my great memories from my very first IFA back when Samsung had its own separate home area booth was I went in there where they were still building it, and there were just Roombas roaming around on the floor by themselves, running free like puppies or something, and the guys just walking around them, jumping between these things. It was like this beautiful chaos of technology while they were still building this place. It was and that is just IFA in a nutshell to me.
IFA
Madness, technology, home stuff, and just craziness all around.
All right, so I think we kicked this off with me asking you about your highlight, and you said the phone.
Probably.
If you had to pick one more, what would be your kind of most interesting thing that you saw?
I think the that crazy new Lenovo laptop.
I was probably going to.
Yeah, definitely.
That,
I mean, I think I can say we've seen that in various stages of development over the past few months. There's an Android version, there's a Windows version. It's very rare that you get something in the laptop space that kind of fundamentally changes what we think of as a laptop with physical keys and stuff. So that was amazing to see. It's going to be a challenge getting people to get used to touch typing on a display, but a pane of glass that size. But it's the kind of thing that they're really good at in taking that something unconventional and putting it into a product and just running with it.
Yeah, I think I've said it before, but I think it's a very good first attempt at what could be the beginning of a new product category. I like the blending of the analog with the paper. I like the concept. I really just wish that you could have typed, or sorry, you could have written onto paper and it would transcribe it, but how useful is that with other things that do that?
Sure, it's like the Galaxy Note argument. Are you writing on your phone all the time? Probably not.
I mean, everyone who has one, they're just like, no, I have the clicky thing with the pen.
It's just a clicker. You just
click it. You don't actually really do anything with it. You're like just like click, 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 click. Anyway, so that's pretty. That was Josh and Michael. It's like, no, but Nicole, the stylus, and I'm like, I don't think that's good enough.
That was my favorite thing about the S Pen. So I hadn't used the Note 5 much because they didn't release it in Europe. But I went to the Note 7 event. And I was like, look at this thing. It's clicky because I wasn't used to a clicky S Pen. It was amazing.
That's not a good enough reason to get a Note 7. Well, and now they're exploding. So
well, yeah, like 35 of them are getting too hot or exploding or catching on fire, or whatever. And there's been this famous recall this week, kind of unprecedented.
Very unprecedented. So do you think that this is a stumble that Samsung will recover from, or do you think that this is a big deal?
It's a big deal, but I think if Samsung is a big enough ship, they'll recover from it. Of course they will. It's coming at a really, really bad time for them. And
I kind of think they were already kind of on this little bit of a decline where they had to fight to stay at the top, and I think that this stumble could be an opportunity for these Chinese guys, like say Huawei.
Yeah. And you look
at
Apple. You know, we have an Apple event next week and an LG event next week, and you guarantee both of them are going to bring it up.
Well, I mean, LG had no idea that Samsung was going to do, or sorry, that Apple was going to do an event.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not as if Apple's publicizing this. Yeah. So, anyways, yeah.
Anyway.
But
yeah, you know, I mean, Samsung obviously has this big PR problem right now with this recall, so you know, it's going to be bad for them. And of course, these two companies that have events next week are going to do everything they can to capitalize on that.
Yeah, you're right. Everything they can.
It's what we don't know right now are the sort of the nuts and bolts of how the recall is going to be handled. So the US carriers are getting involved, and they're going to sort of be on the front lines of that. The big thing in Europe is because it was actually recalled before it went on sale here. How much is that going to delay the European launch, and will that eventually push it past the street date for the iPhone? We still don't know that yet.
Everyone that I know in the U.S. that has an iPhone, or sorry, an iPhone 7, a Note 7, a Note 7, yeah, everyone, they've gotten emails saying that their new unit's in the mail, and then when they get that, they can just send it back.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, so that's pretty much everyone that I've heard that has one has had that happen.
And you have to imagine that has to be a logistical nightmare for Samsung.
Logistical nightmare.
To track these things, and especially over the next few weeks, you're going to have some in the wild that are safe, and some in the wild that are unsafe.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a problem, I think, for people who are buying secondhand in the next few months to be able to be in a position where maybe they don't know if they buy something, is it from the batch that potentially had an issue or is it not?
See, this is where I think they're having a stumble, and I don't think they're going to recover. That's where I'm landing on it anyways.
We'll have to see.
We'll have to see. All right, Alex, thanks so much for taking the time to come into Tech Lounge, talk to me about everything that's been going on at IFA. And we're going to take a very short break where I go outside and find Vlad from The Verge. And he's had a very interesting IFA where he's come across some really solid products that he's going to fill me on. And then I think that we might have a little bit of a complaint about what's happening with Intel.
Can't imagine Vlad complaining about anything.
I know. All right, we'll be back in just a moment.